It's time to work. Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So, the people here, are you already, did you already experience the 𝘵 time work, 𝘵 time, the film downstairs? If you already saw the 𝘵 time film, just only 2 people, or 4 people, 5, 6, 7, 8, like that. Okay, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna play because me too. I saw the 𝘵 time just downstairs when I came here in the morning. So that impressed me. I played that, my impression of that 𝘵 time. So the music I'm gonna play would help you to understand more clear and deeper of the 𝘵 time. I hope so. If you don't see the 𝘵 time yet, still, my play could walk you to understand deeper and more clear about 𝘵 time if you go down to steer and see the film of 𝘵 time, after this show. Oh no, sorry. After this show, if you enjoyed my sound, there's my CD at the door. You can buy if you like. Just $15, Singapore dollar, not US dollar. It's 15 Singapore dollar each one, and I can give you my autograph if you like. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed. And also one more thing. I'm a musician, so hopefully if there is anybody from entertainment music scene or promoter or producer, you can book me later. All right, thank you. I hope you enjoy.
So hi everyone. I know that there's some fresh faces, so I'll just introduce myself very quickly. My name is Kenneth. I'm just gonna take us through session 2 for today. I just want to start out by saying it's quite a tough act to follow after a saxophone performance. But the four of us will do our best. And it's also harder when I consider the fact that today's session is, this session in particular is a bit of an experiment on my end. Because all the invited speakers that I have with me today are not directly involved in any of the production of T for Time or timepieces. But what I wanted to do was to gather external, friends, I would consider us friends by now, to come and respond in particularly to T for Time timepieces. So all of them have sort of prepared some kind of response, I suppose, upon seeing timepieces. And I also wanted to keep Newton on loop because I think when you see it in one time as a one-time screening, you might not be able to notice so much the subtle difference between the cuts. I'll just direct your attention to the point in which the book hits, the protagonist hits. Sometimes the protagonist is tilting to the left, sometimes it's tilting to the right. So that's a subtle repetition in difference, if I can give the magic away. But also I was quite tempted also to have this thing constantly on loop in the background as I speak, because if you actually pay attention to the film, each cycle in the work lasts quite nicely, exactly, I would say, 1 minute and 5 seconds. So it could theoretically work as a kind of timekeeping device. Because every timekeeping device, I guess, is just important that it's repeatable at the same time and therefore also predictable, right? And I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more about that later. But yeah, that's all just to say that to help us maybe think outside of time a little bit, outside of the time loops and cycles within Zhu Nyen's work, we have with us 3 very good speakers. Today, I'll just introduce them shortly because you can refer to the leaflet for a longer bio. But immediately to my left is Dr. Meng Yusong, or Yusong as he prefers to be called. So Yusong is the head of electromagnetics and time metrology cluster at A*STAR's National Metrology Center. So what that means is basically he's the scientist in charge of making sure that all your clocks, all the important ones in Singapore, are synchronized to Singapore Standard Time. So if there's anything that breaks down, you can look for him. And I'm very happy that he's able to join us today. And then in the middle is Dr. Mrázek, who's also the associate professor at the Department of Southeast Asian Studies at NUS, who I think at one point Zhu Nyen actually crashed his lecture before. So he's an old friend, I suppose. But he's also, I should say, also the founding director of an ensemble by the name of 𝘕𝘌𝘮𝐺𝐿𝐴 Gamelan Ensemble. Right? I hope I pronounced that fairly okay. And then lastly, of course, we have Lalit Kumar Ganesh, who is a musician as well as a performer whose work draws influence from a wide range, including Indian classical music, Afro-Cuban, Afro-Peruvian, as well as flamenco music. So he's going to share a little bit about his own relationship to music as a temporal practice. But all in all, I just want to say that I wanted this session to be really a gathering of new friends to speak a little bit about their own relationship to time as a practice. Right? I want to also begin, before passing the time over to Dr. Meng, by referencing a very famous quote by Albert Einstein, which is that space and time are modes in which we think, not just conditions in which we exist, right? And I think that's really an important way to think about time itself as a mode of practice. It's something that we don't just exist within, but also something that we think with, but also changes, the way we relate to the environment around us. And with that, I'll pass the time over to Yusong, who will share a little bit about, I guess, much more about what you do, but also, the global time today that we know today as coordinated universal time, right? Which allows us to all meet at this standard time, right? Okay, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Kenneth. Possible I just stand. So it's my great honor to be invited for this panel discussion. Actually, first of all, I have not relevant to this community because I'm a scientist, possible a science nerd. And when I have the chance to visit the art shows there, actually I have a lot of resonance there because artists also have the same thinking as for timekeeping. Because a lot of concept there is really what we are using for our scientific works and how we maintain the Singapore Standard Time. So please allow me to share something about what is a time. Time is actually not touchable. So we cannot say, okay, this time I can touch you, right? So, but we have to invent something which can measure the time. So long time ago, our ancestors, they already tried to understand how we can measure time by counting the parts of day, like the sun. So they count, this is 1 day, daytime and the nighttime. And then they also very cleverly invent something they call the sundial. So the sundial is, they also have the better understanding of the sun, how the sun moves around the earth. And then they use the shadow of this sundial to really record the time. So this one possible is the highest accurate sundial in China. This is in the Forbidden City. And when I prepared these slides, I also tried to search in Singapore. And immediately I found, actually Singapore also have one sundial. So I'm not sure whether you're familiar with this area. This is actually at the Botanical Garden. So it's almost about 100 years old. So, but now with the quick development of technology, we have moved to a next level. We are using this is one of the atomic clocks. So we try to understand the atom, how we can excite the atom from one level to another level. That we call it the excited state. And then when it's released from this state, jump back to its original state, ground state, it will send out some signal. This signal is a very high precision. It's a high precision signal. It's very accurate. So we can count this signal to give us the time. So this is the state of art works. Of course, here I just show you the principle how it works. It looks quite simple. But for real clock, okay, this is one of the real optic clocks, the quantum clocks. Is okay for scientists. It's also a very beautiful and wonderful artwork. So, yeah, this is what we are doing and try to build up the atomic clock to maintain the time. Just now, from last panel discussion, I heard about the natural time and the human time possible. There are many of times. The concept actually is completely right. They are same. So I try to use this picture to explain why they look the same. Because for a clock, they used to measure time. It's actually we include oscillator, and then another we have count. Let's say for the sundial, we utilize the Earth's rotation as this oscillator. And if we look at those pendulum clocks, actually they're based on these oscillations. Even just now the film, as explained Kenneth, it's also a very repeat duration events or duration. So that one we can also use as the oscillator. Then we just need to find another, we call the counter. How to counter them? Therefore, the sundial we use the shadow to counter the Earth's rotation. And for the pendulum, we actually use gears. So I also saw some very beautiful gears in the art shows. So this is a basic concept, how a clock works. And I also try to take this time to share what is the history of the time. So Kenneth also asked me whether there is just one framework of the time, right? So this answer, after very carefully thinking in my mind, is yes or no. Because at a certain time or specific time, we just use one time frame. But in the history of our life, actually we have quite a lot of different, for example, we use Earth as a clock. So this is almost the most accurate one over the possible 500 years. And they will also have the astronomical observation they use at the clock, because we can watch it as a star and we can have understand what the time means. But as a scientist, we are looking at the physical maturity. We invent something. That instrument can be used to measure the clock. But of course, over the past 100 years, this is quite slow. But this gentleman, he actually developed the first prototype of the pendulum clocks. And this achieved a lot of significant process in the human life, because it can offer us some instrument that we can very precise to measure the time. And the Harrison also invented another one we call the marine chronometer. That one actually enables us to exploit the world, because normally in Asia we just living in this world, in China, but UK they can have the maritime, they can explore the whole world. They find the North America. So this is actually they call this is the longevity who solved the greatest scientific problem in his time, because he opened another door for us. So the latest development of the time measurement is actually by the atomic clock. Just now I already showed you one of the picture. So its performance actually outperformed the Earth as a clock quite a lot. So this is the society has decided that we need to shift from the Earth, the sundial time or solar time, to atomic time. So this is this is just some history we try to share with you how the human measure the time. So when we use the sundial or the solar time as our time reference, actually in Japan, in Singapore, China, US, we all use the same sun. So the sun is like an absolute reference for us. So we can use the sun to calibrate all our clocks. So the time in Singapore will be same as the time in Japan, or even time in the Italy or in the UK. But when we use the atomic clock, so the clock maybe drift a lot. I remember you shared with me the concept that there are two frames, right? So you try to connect the cable between two computers. So theoretically, after long term of run, the two films will not be synchronized, because the computer have their all on board the clocks. So one will be run faster, another one will be run slower. So in this case, for those human-made clocks, we need to do some calibration. How we can do the calibration? Firstly, we need to have a reference. So this is the concept of currently the UTC time. We call the coordinated universal time. So the whole world actually work together. So there are total about 450 atomic clocks from 80 national labs in the world. In Singapore, we are participating in this mission. We contribute about 7 clocks. So one clock, the highest one possible, about the $500,000 of Singapore dollars. It's a very expensive investment. So the scientists, they will work on the signal they received, and then they do some calculations. They will give out the one of the weighted average atomic clock. This one is a free run. And based on the definition of the primary frequency, they can do some adjustment we call steering. So we can steer the frequency a little bit to make it match with the theoretical value. So this is the process we generate the international atomic time. So everyone will use this one as a reference. But as just now I shared, whether there's just one frame of time. Actually, even we have the atomic clock, there are still some industry, they are using the solar time. The reason for the farmer, right? When they need to go to for the rice or for those plants, so they need to understand the when is good time. So this is the reason in China they have the lunar calendar. So the lunar calendar is actually based on the solar times. So to make each of us actually connected and we can work together. So all the atomic clock actually has to be correct with Earth's rotation, because Earth can rotate faster or rotate slower. So recently the report news is the Earth actually becomes slower and slower for the self-rotation. So for the scientists, we try to understand how we can offset 1 second, which means the atomic time is possible will be 1 second faster than the solar time. So we need to remove from the atomic clock. So this is what we are doing for how to generate this UTC time. Okay, how we can use this one. So as just now I explained, each country we will have our own time scales. In Singapore, we maintain the physical time scale generated from the atomic clock. And then we disseminate all the time signal to all the sectors in Singapore, to the government, to the military, and also to the maritime. If you just walk out and walk around, you'll find that there's some port here. So for all the port operation, they utilize quite a lot of the GPS for the positioning. So the principle of the positioning is actually based on the time. Because they will give you position, they will give you distance, right? We have no so long a roller to measure the distance. Actually, we measure the time from the signal, from satellite to the ground. We know the time and we know the speed of light. Then we know this distance. So this is the reason. So if let's say the GPS are done, then we have no any tools we can use to position. So this is also one of our mission in Singapore is we try to build a resilient time network in Singapore. So in case the GPS are done, then we can still have a landed system. We can provide the time signal to all the positioning, navigation, and the time application in Singapore. So this is some work I would like to share with you. Yes, thank you very much.
Thanks, Yusong. So thanks so much. I mean, while Lalit and Yan take their place again, I just want to follow up from Yusong and say that, one of the discussions that we had very quickly was the whole discrepancy between solar time and atomic time. Because solar time, as he mentioned, if it's based on the sun's, the Earth's rotation around the sun, but the Earth's rotation is constantly changing. Sometimes it's fast, sometimes it's slow, it's not consistent, right? But atomic time, based on the oscillation of the season atom, as it is right now, that's subject to change, I heard. But currently it's based on the oscillation of season atom, and that is constantly oscillating and incrementing regardless of geophysics, right? And so that is the discrepancy. Constantly, scientists are constantly asking themselves if they want to increment leap seconds, right? We just had a leap day, right, a couple of days ago, but few people know about the concept of leap seconds, right? Leap seconds is to account for this discrepancy between the Earth's rotation and solar time vis-a-vis atomic time. And these are some of the questions that we think about as I sort of thought about this session, and also partly why I wanted to invite people like Yan, but also Lalit, to think about not just the gaps between this discrepancy as we go, right? To think about time as this gap and what you can do within this gap, right? As a musician, but also in Yan's case, also quite interestingly, some observations between I hope I'm not spoiling it, but some observations between gamelan music itself, but also how we think about containerization of time, right? Itself. So with that, I pass the time over to Yan, and we can gather again after Lalit's performance / presentation, and we can talk a little bit more. And yeah.
Okay, thanks very much, and thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it, and I'm sorry if my talk is probably a bit academic compared to all the music and everything, but I think I'm also a little bit of a caricature of an academic, so we'll see. Okay, let me start by talking about time in Javanese gamelan music. This is not an atomic clock. This is how time is often analyzed and taught. The circle represents a cycle of musical time punctuated by gongs. It's like a church clock where a larger bell tolls every whole hour and a smaller one every quarter. The big gong, the G in the diagram, marks the whole cycle, like the whole hour. It is divided into quarters by the kenong, N. The kenong cycle is divided by kempul, P, which sounds midway between kenongs. The time between kenongs and kempuls is similarly subdivided by ketuk, T. And finally, the remaining time is subdivided by kempiang, Y. It is a driverless animation of how this sounds, except that it doesn't sound. Can we have the volume up? But it's kind of nice, also silent. It's like totally visual. There should be more sound. Okay, let me try the next one. Okay, this is the gamelan when, small gamelan where everything plays. Okay, you will see okay. Within the gong cycle, there are smaller cycles. If one thinks of the larger cycle as a cogwheel with 32 teeth, the kenong cycle is a smaller, faster cog with 8 teeth, and the kempiang ketuk cycle has 4 teeth. Gamelan time can be stretched or contracted. The wheel can move at significantly different speeds, twice as fast, 4 times as fast, and so on. Or one can imagine this as a system of shifting gears. Or one can imagine this as a system of concentric circles, each an expansion or contraction of the others. Or as in this French visualization, like a love affair between a lotus flower and a cogwheel. There is something clock-like about time in gamelan represented in this way. I will return to this thought later, but first I want to say something about how these time cycles figure in performance. There are some ancient ceremonial gamelans whose music is nothing but the sounding of time cycles. In common practice today, the punctuating gongs form only one layer of sound, like the foundation of a building, and multiple melodies are woven above the gong structure. Each voice has a different personality and attitude to time. The melodies converge only at the structural points marked by the bigger gongs, in the name of togetherness, but retain their independence at other times. This includes singing, which also superimposes irregular poetic timings, associations, and warmth onto the rigid gong cycles. The performance of the shadow puppet theater lasts the whole night, with the gamelan playing continuously. The changing feeling of the night, the changing mood of socializing, the dramatic time, and music all mirror and enhance each other. In all this, the machine-like structure of the gongs plays a key role. It determines the feeling or tension. The faster the circle turns and the denser the interplay of gongs is, the more tense or animated the feeling. The puppeteer uses this to create and control the feeling of each moment, controlling the speed at which the wheel of gong turns, controlling people's feelings like a driver controlling speed with the gas pedal. In practice, then, the gong cycles are part of a performance and social event, alive with poetry, play, and human interaction. You can see a gamelan and dance performance. I'm behind on my slides. You can see a gamelan and dance performance next Friday by our gamelan group called the Relaxing Lions, or maybe tigers, maybe cats. A few years ago, I traveled on a container ship from Rotterdam to Singapore. I wanted to repeat the voyages of travelers in the colonial times. reflecting on how the past is and is not past, just as they were repeating earlier voyages and cycles of reflections. My favorite place on the ship was the bow, far from the loud engine. The waves were pounding against the metal hull of the ship, a giant gong played by the ocean, producing deep, soft tones. The waves were only one kind of cyclical time, intersecting like cogwheels with others. It was very gamelan-like. This is what I wrote about it then in an essay, so I will quote from that. The seaman's time is regularly divided into blocks of work and rest, incessantly alternating machine-like day and night like a never-ending row of containers. The containerization of time typical of modern work is here particularly inescapable, and because of that, particularly urgent is the need to find pleasure and joy. Time is particularly cyclical at sea, with each cycle moving at its own speed like a cogwheels of different sizes inside a watch. Seamen live through the cycles of their tours of duty, 9 months for Filipinos, 4 months for Eastern Europeans, cycles of camaraderie, homesickness, and expectations, overlapping cycles that for each person start and end at a different time and place. The ship's round trip lasts 3 months, a cycle of more or less memorable or dangerous sports, straits, seas, and climates. The rotation of 4-hour shifts on and off regularly divides time, day and night, with no weekends. The huge vessel rocks slowly from one side to another, the pendulum of a giant clock, and ceaselessly, like the ticking of a watch, the weighty vibrations of the engine reverberate across the whole ship, the beating of the ship's iron heart. Time and again I recall this phrase and sounds like a refrain throughout a Czech novel based on a 1919 novel along the same route. This is end of quotation from my essay. Containers are the stuff of global capitalism. Yet I was mesmerized by the container system. Any container anywhere in the world fits on another, like gears, and on any standardized truck, crane, or train. As if the whole world were a system of gears in a mechanical clock, or a structure of gong cycles. The multiple intersecting cycles of time of the boat were part of this, time containerized to the tune of global capitalist rhythm, beautiful like the chance meeting of a cogwheel and a lotus flower. I am tempted to move against exoticizing gamelan or wayang time as the other of mechanical, modern, containerized time. Machine time and musical time is each an interplay of poetry and containerization, which are not simply opposites. With and against this thought, let me go back to the circle diagrams representing gamelan time. They are not commonly used or known in Java. They were introduced as an analytical and teaching tool by American ethnomusicologists in the 1960s at the age of mechanical clocks, big cars, and marijuana. Last week, I posted a question about the circle diagrams on an international email list, and one American scholar shared this. Somehow the text does not appear. Oh, I know why, because my background was black and here it's white. Interesting. So it kind of eliminates lots of the stuff there, which is okay. It might be better. I like to think of gong cycle, this is a quote from this scholar. I like to think of the gong cycle as the gears of a manual transmission. Each gear has an ideal RPM range. When you get above or below that range, you need to shift gears. I like to think of the full Javanese gamelan as a train or semi-truck. Once in motion, it really wants to stay in motion. Trying to brake, accelerate, shift gears, or turn suddenly is where you turn into problems. End of quote from this scholar. It looks ugly, but it's okay. It shows I'm not an artist. When I teach gong cycles to students, do I teach them to hear gamelan through clocks and American cars? We are condemned to represent and perceive one time always through another, or through spatial metaphors, diagrams, or visual images. Through our own and other shadows and projections, I'm interested in the creative, destructive violence that is involved in such metaphorical representations and perception in multiple screens. Again, all the text is not there. In Jules Verne's novel Around the world in 80 days. The protagonist is a genuine piece of machinery, these are quotes, perfectly balanced in all his parts, weighted and poised, as flawless as a chronometer, whose precision in everything is well known, end of quote. The man clock is an embodiment of civilization, fast transport, and perfect travel connections. The world as a system of gears, timetables, and containers. In another novel by Verne, we encounter an academic man-machine. The director, again a quote, "The director of applied sciences stood up. His furious oration was remarkably similar to the whistles, jangles, squeals, the thousand unpleasant noises which escape an active steam engine. It would be impossible to stem this high-pressure eloquence, and the grating phrases locked into one another like cogwheels. He is getting overheated," someone said, extending our metaphor. "Next, you will be telling me he has safety valves, but an exploding director of applied sciences would set a nasty precedent." End of quote. When I teach my gamelan circles, am I such a man-machine, surveying, mapping, colonizing, containerizing music with my diagrams and concepts, like land to be colonized? But what if the poetry of cars, containers, and clocks is not so different from gamelan, which too measures and containerizes time? And Western man clocks and man machines not so different from the Javanese gamelan players, who too, in their own way, manage and control time. In Java, too, tradition is seen through modern technology. The magic power of the Chris dagger, for example, is discussed in terms of radio or magnetic waves, and Arjuna's arrows in Vayang that can intercept enemies' arrows are discussed as precursors of the American Patriot missiles. I conceptualize and even live time always through other times, through multiple metaphors, through multiple projection screens, in gear with each other. I am a man clock and man machine and man gamelan, perceiving gamelan through clocks and clocks through gamelan, container ship time through gamelan time and vice versa, Singaporean, Javanese, American, and Czech time through each other. And now, I perceive time through the shadows and projections of Tsu's work, and his work through my own baggage of time, musics, clocks, ships, and deadlines. I'm sorry if I'm over time.
I just want to tell you, you're not over time, don't worry. We still have time for time. And then lastly, I'll pass the time over to Lalit. Yes, if you want to. But thanks, Jan, for such a wonderful thinking about containerization of time and this whole typically our division between what is machinic and what is organic is not often as straightforward as we seem. And hopefully we can come back to that at the end of the conversation and together with Yusong as well as Lalit. But for now, I'll pass the time over to Lalit himself, who might, I don't know, just take the mic and take us away to somewhere.
Hey too. Thanks, Kenneth. I also want to extend a big thank you to Jan and Dr. Meng, because a little bit of what I'm going to say is definitely theft from some of Jan's thoughts. So thank you. And to Dr. Meng, the next time my guitarist or vocalist yells over at me for not keeping time properly, I'm going to tell him, hey buddy, the world's moving a second slower. So thank you so much for that. So yes, my name is Lalit, and I'm a percussionist. I think sometimes I produce music as well, so I never define any of, I try not to define myself in any of these ways. Music maker. And the next 8 minutes of me sharing my thoughts, I really want to extend my gratitude to Nyen and Kenneth for inspiring me to think about certain things and my own practice in a certain way and my relationship to time with the artwork and with the questions as well. So thank you both so much. So my relationship with time, I like to tell a story first. And this story takes us back, say, about 13 years ago, when I had a little less white hair in my beard as well. So I was in India, in the state of Maharashtra at that time, and I was playing a concert with this amazing sitar maestro. Sitar is a beautiful North Indian string instrument, and the tabla is usually paired alongside with it to keep time. So I was playing this concert. The concert ends. I was excited. I was really happy, and I'm on the car ride back home with the instrumentalist. And as we're driving, there's this silence that engulfs the car, and I'm sitting there thinking, "Oh gosh!" And then finally, the car stops amidst the immense traffic that's happening there, and he tells me, "Lalit, you actually played okay today. It was good. And but I want you to think about something. Don't play mathematics." So that thought sat in my mind for a while, and the day passed, 2 days passed, and the next couple of days later in the evening when we have our rehearsals, we sit through till for many hours till when the moon sits in very comfortably. And he said, "Do you understand what I mean when I say don't play mathematics?" I said, "No, Guruji, no, I don't quite get it." Then he tells me this breakdown that's going to shape the next 6 to 7 minutes of what I'm going to say. He said, in music making, there's always 3 stages. Music as theory. That means you understand the grammar, you understand the key building blocks of it. Music as technique, because all musicians have to hone their modalities at some point, whether it's your fingers, whether it's your wrist, whether it's your throats for vocalists and so on. And there's this final stage where maybe many of us don't actually get to, and that's music as an art. And that will be the story that defines the next 5 to 6 minutes. So my relationship with time, I like to think of the first stage as time as meter. So time as meter goes back to really the building blocks, many of the things that Dr. Meng was also talking about, going back, setting grids, about providing consistency, bringing a common platform for all of us to sit together and be at the same, relatively a similar page over there. So a lot of it is very discrete, a lot of it is very numerical, and there's a lot of building blocks that happen from that point, whether it's very improvised or very, very planned. So it gives us a sense of center, it gives us a sense of arrival. And that's my first relationship with time, time as meter. And it also relates to one identity that I have as that is of a tabla player. And much of our role is based on keeping a meter for a melodic artist to develop the mood and the repertoire, or the raga. So, and our role is to keep time for them. So that's my first relationship with time, time as meter. And the second part of it becomes, I like to think of it as a bigger space than just discrete values. It's a collection of these discrete values, and that's time as spectrum. So time as spectrum involves setting structures. So setting structures in the sense, when I'm sitting here as a speaker or a performer, and when you're sitting there as a listener and audience, or also as a thought collector, an idea collector, we are setting this space of personal space, private space, and public space. So a great performer is able to reach out to you and enter your personal space. And that's why we become so drawn to them. And they're able to leave such an impact. And they follow your work, they want to do everything for you. They want to travel everywhere that you go to, buy all your records, buy all your albums, and see all the merchandise that you have to offer, because a visual artist or a painting or a music piece or a dance piece has reached into them and has observed their personal space. So time as a spectrum relates to this in the sense of creating cadences, creating movements, creating a picture, a sonic spectrum which involves tension and release. A lot of it, different styles of music have different grammatical points for it. Indian classical music has tihais, they have progressions that move from slow to fast. Flamenco has things such as llamadas, remates, things that provide a close, an end, a grammatical movement that allows the creator to create slight dissonance and then bring back release and acceptance. So one of the key things that we have in relation to time is observed in Indian classical music in 2 parts. One is laya, which is the speed, and the other is tala, which is a cyclical format, like the clock. So tala in the Indian music provides us the cadence in a very natural sense of arrival and a natural sense of anticipation. So that is time as a spectrum. The last part of it that I'd like to touch on goes back to the story that I was telling. So we've moved from music as theory, music as technique, and the last part is music as an art, and that's the correlation that I would like to bring back to this last part, is perception of time. I think humans, us, people, have a very, very fundamental time machine in all of us. As science offers us great precision, there's this very natural sense of precision that we all embody, and that's our heartbeat. It offers so much of precision without which there's so much of intricacies that will cease to exist. It's a phenomenally precise machine. But yet at the same time, it is this very organ, the heart, that allows us to cry, that allows us to say hello, that allows us to hope, and that allows us to fall in love as well. So it coexists in terms of precision as a machine and as something that generates so much emotion. The heartbeat is a discrete value. Heart beats. The diastole and the systole of the heart provides two discrete values. I like to think of time not as these two discrete values, but the space within, and maybe how we utilize this space as where life exists. So that's the heartbeat. And at the same time, as a music maker, as someone who tries to create a mood, someone who tries to convey or share some thoughts that I have with you and vice versa, understand where you are, is the same process that I also observe. Understanding the feeling, the space between a set of beats, and how we can utilize that, how we can bend that to create an emotion and something that's always rendering, gives us peace and gives us a little bit of happiness. And I feel like that's where life exists as well. As an art maker, in that process, in that space, we observe past tense because we utilize everything that we know with technique, with knowledge, with our life experiences. So past tense exists there. Present tense exists there as well, because right now as I look into you, I try to think and be very, very present as I share this with you. And the future tense could coexist there because we are a collection of ideas. We have dreams, we have thoughts, and we have feelings that may be linked to some of these as well. So these three can all coexist in this space between two discrete beats. And that's where music lives for me. So that's really pretty much it from me. Yes, we can actually. So as I was walking through, as I was walking through the exhibitions and the artwork of Nyen, and as Kenneth was just kind of putting through some thought provocations to me as well, I was trying to think about how I could summarize all of this in 2 minutes. And I'd like to play a piece that I kind of just summed up over the last 36 to 40 hours ago. And here goes.
So I want to thank Lalit, Yan, as well as Yusong for their time. I've been told that we have to rush along now, because unfortunately we ran out of time to talk about time. But I'll just end with a very quick remark. Basically, is that one of the reasons why we sat down all together, and we can have conversations outside of sessions afterwards. But because Tea for Time and Tea for Time timepieces is still an ongoing work, I guess, for Nyen. What we wanted to do is really think of this session as an extended intermission, right, from lunch, and just take a step back because we'll cycle back again to Nyen's practice in the last session together with 𝘕𝘪𝘮𝑦. But yeah, really this is just to help us think a little bit broader about time as well through the various sort of temporal practices, I would say. And with that, yeah, I'd like to join everyone in thanking, get everyone to join me in thanking our speakers. Dr. Meng, Dr. Yan, as well as Lalit for this session.